Sowers of Life, Veronica Paz Wells, Chapter 1's Re-Encounter. Slowly the sunlight came into the room through the window slits, announcing the beginning of a new day. The majestic megacity of Sao Paulo awoke hot, sunny, a little more polluted, and with its inhabitants hurrying to work. Another busy, frenzied Wednesday was beginning with the added vigorous routine of preparing for a long holiday eve. This November 15th, 1990 holiday would be prolonged by a Friday holiday as well, making the city even more hectic. For the ones who lived in Sao Paulo, in general, it would be a great opportunity to travel to a beautiful beach or some pleasant place to relax and forget the worries of a hectic life. But for my wife and myself, it would be the start of one more incredible adventure. Christine was getting ready for work, making up her beautiful face reflected in the bathroom mirror, while I tried to wake up under the shower. We quickly discussed the details of our long trip, settling the time of her arrival home from the office, the time to set out on the road, and the shopping for the necessary supplies needed for the days we would camp in the green, this peaceful woods of Serra da Mantiqueira. All was organized. The camping equipment came out of the garage straight to the garden while I went through the shopping checklist, which was my responsibility. Christine started the car in a hurry, giving me some final instructions and insisting on following the timetable punctually. A tender kiss and a sad look of goodbye confirmed that now everything was in my hands. 3 sluggish months had passed since I had received the message from the extraterrestrials for another encounter. 1990 had been a period of many outings afield, of frequent manifestation of alien beings, of unobstructed observation of their spaceships, and of a great quantity of phenomena at the encounter site. But the conditions for the preparation this time were much more rigid, with no room for mistakes. Christine had been very nervous and excited those last days, with good reason. The expectations for this trip heralded the beginning of an important, unique experience. This experience would determine a new phase of our work and consequently a major alteration of the routine to be followed. While I walked along the supermarket aisles looking for the items I needed, I pondered over all we were involved in, and my memories went back to the past. A little more than 2 months before we had returned from Cusco, Peru, where for the first time, Brazilians had taken part in a world meeting with Rama groups of other countries, an event organized by my brother and his work groups. That experience was important for all of us, because it showed that although the human being is complicated, sometimes frivolous, there are people who are open-minded and well-directed towards their inner development. In the past, my brother had chosen to follow a particular line of work according to his understanding of the contact we had experienced together and tried to show his followers how to improve. However, a few people around him built a complicated, ponderous relationship of dependence. For all initiatives for new activities, information, studies, etc., were at his instigation. Even the motivation to continue the work and to keep the groups united were from his initiative. This type of paternalistic, vertical relationship, established over the years in the absence of better work organization or better understanding of the objectives of contact, physical distances, and the continuous demands for information and orientation from the growing number of people in the groups all over the world, contributed to the rise of manipulators and manipulatings, intrigues and maneuvers serving egotistical interests. Disputes arose for local, national, and even international leadership, all of which should not seem strange to us. Everywhere, there are people who are not willing to change and who try to adjust the rules of development to their own liking, hindering any real change and reverting the group to the repressions, egotisms, and limitations they should have overcome. My brother could not see clearly what was happening around him because of his frequent and exhausting trips to different places in the world where his presence was requested. His personal life always sacrificed to the continuous insistence of curious people. His eyes were on the distant horizon, focused between the wish to offer a better method for self-discovery and the desire to do his utmost to help others. But it did not weaken our spirit, nor did it prevent our stay in that paradise in the Peruvian Andes from being marvelous. Dealing with human beings implies that you have to go through that kind of situation. There are always people who have a limited vision of things, but there are always exceptions as well. The meeting gave us the opportunity to meet a lot of charming and receptive people who opened their hearts as well as their minds to each one of us. Those days in Cusco in the valley of Urubamba brought to my mind and imagination the saga of the Incan Empire. It was incredible to think that in these whereabouts, more than 500 years ago, the hosts of the Inca Pachacutec walked on that same land where I was. I wondered whether, preceding his army, the warrior emperor had camped here, right here, before leaving for new battles and conquering other peoples. And there, in that same place, a new group of people and myself were writing world history again. A history where battles were being fought only internally, each of us concerned with the future of man. It was curious to see how things change in the world. In the cradle of a culture that centuries ago astonished the world and the Spanish conquerors with their development, organization, and ability, a new situation arose in the mysteries of time and again astonished the world. 3 contacts arranged weeks in advance, and in the presence of guest journalists equipped to their teeth with movie and photo cameras, had been a total success when those formal, skeptical, conservative people had confirmed the presence of spacecrafts of extraterrestrial origin. I had looked at the stars in the sky, wondering what would happen the following day, in a few days, or right at that moment. Among the spectators and visitors in that meeting, there were Chilean journalists from TV Channel 7 from Santiago, Chile, recording interviews for the program's special information. After giving a few interviews, I talked with them for some time, noticing their unquenchable curiosity. It was difficult for these people to understand what we were accomplishing. They associated it with rituals and ceremony, anything but something really important. They could not look beyond the foolishness uttered by some, nor the exaggeration by others. My God, I thought, when will they look at us seriously and realize the great moment humanity is bound to face and the avalanche of opportunities that will arise? In spite of all the evidence already presented, the importance of the moment escaped their notice, including the fact of the great number of participants. The journalists pursued objects to photograph, constantly looking for any mistakes or foolishness that would justify their skepticism. A few looked for proof, a phenomenon, or something they could tell people about afterwards. Others, very few I believe, seemed to be more secure and conscious of their intentions and purposes. But what about the Brazilians that accompanied me? I wondered if, after almost 16 years of activities, proof, encounters, and various experiments in Brazil, people had not yet acquired a clear, objective perception of everything we were involved in. From what I could see, it seemed they had. Anyway, the days we spent in Cusco were very interesting and important. The balance was positive and significant, although we noticed that there were still people more concerned with other people's business than with their own. There were others who were friendly and alert, with whom we could exchange ideas or suggest a joint line of work and research. Although the road to higher levels of consciousness is very long and difficult, there were some people there of great value and courage who were willing to follow it as soon as possible. So we had discovered the reason for our trip. We came back from Cusco happy to have found some people who were ready for a transformation, willing to share a new vision of the process of inner growth with us. Human beings who favored our idea of finding a new, freer way to further our comprehension of life. People who had a lot to offer from their own experience, showing us other innovative and creative aspects we had never thought of before. We reached an agreement to evaluate totally what had been achieved up till then, formulate a proposal of clear, practical objectives, and establish parameters that would measure the work, performance, and its results. All that would be presented in the next world meeting. I remembered and pondered the importance of this project. The work and its results belong to all those who want to grow and to expand their state of consciousness. And in that work, our role is that of mere intermediaries, heralds of a fantastic, marvelous reality within everybody's reach, mere introducers who present the outline of an alternative road. My brother and I, those who began in 1974, and those who were beginning now the difficult work of rearranging the path that leads to the comprehension of a human being's inner and outer reality, discovered a secret bypass that would lead us to where no one had ever dreamed. This magical road is simply the understanding that there is much to learn about life, love, our being intelligent and thinking, how to use our abilities constructively to make our lives productive, and about how to really change the future that now threatens us. Project Rama established a relationship with more advanced beings who so generously are willing to help those who turn to them with sincerity. Back to the present, between my thoughts and the supermarket trolley, the trip that we would begin this day, and that was mixed with the memories of so many other outings and experiments, would be special and important, as I have mentioned. The Serra de Montecarlo awaited us, majestic, imposing, mysterious, and challenging. This ecological scenery would be the stage of one more contact with the extraterrestrials, where the schedule of activities and work to be accomplished in the following years would be defined. A plan of action in conjunction with various countries, both American and European, would be presented, and our activities for the following 10 years would be based on it. This experiment would be transcendental for our future, and it would be the only opportunity near at hand to resolve our concerns regarding our present performance and to evaluate the results obtained up to now, not only in Brazil, but all over the world as well. In short, the destiny of all the groups, Brazilian and foreign, linked to our work was going to be defined. So we hope to make the best of this trip and its results, returning to Sao Paulo with the conviction and tranquility of having concluded one more stage in the process of our development, more committed to our work and conscious of the responsibility that lay ahead of us. Although there were around 15 groups, only 2 were called for this meeting. Group 6 from Cotia, SP, composed of 6 members, of whom only Beniera and Christine, my wife, would be present. And Group 4 from Sao Paulo, composed of 8 members, all of whom would be present. I would be the coordinator of the experiment and the intermediary in the field activities. Christine and I would go first on Wednesday in order to prepare and secure our spot, where later Newton, Cesar, Flavio, and DDG would join us. Together, we would start to put up the tents, making room for the rest of the group that would arrive on Thursday morning, depending, of course, on how heavy traffic was on Presidente Dutra Highway. The day passed quickly amidst arrangements and preparations. Around 3 p.m., the baggage was already in the car, the shopping dealt with, and I was waiting for my wife. 1.5 hours later, we were driving on the road along Tiete River towards the Trabalhadores highways and then Dutra Highway. 300 kilometers lay ahead of us, and we would have to cope with the heavy traffic that was already starting to cause the delays typical at the beginning of a prolonged holiday. Some exhausting hours and many cars later, we stopped at a gas station. Back on the highway, right on the border with Rio de Janeiro, a huge traffic jam on the already busy road delayed us for 2 hours. Even so, our mood was not affected. The anticipation of this new adventure and of what would come from it kept us alert, awaiting the events. We knew that everything was part of the experiment, that every movement was being watched, and that everything was being analyzed. Therefore, our attitude should reflect all we had learned throughout the years, for it would determine if we were qualified to receive a new crucial task. In the early morning, we reached our destination. We had seen hares and opossums that crossed the road among the trees, as if welcoming us. These small creatures, nature rarities that keep their distance from human beings and are usually only seen in films, cheered us up and reminded us that we had entered another world, far from civilization and almost virgin, untouched as yet by man's hand. To our surprise, although we had been delayed, we noticed that our 3 friends had not arrived yet. Even though we were exhausted by the journey, we began to put up the tents by flashlight. All we wanted at that moment was to go to sleep as soon as possible, listening to the sound of a small waterfall, the best lullaby. By early morning, our missing friends arrived, much to our relief. Following their arrival, the others came in one by one. The only one who was due on Saturday was Gilbert, delayed because of a few family commitments. 2 other young men, Luis Tadashi and Diego Alberto, both experienced contactees, old instructors, and survivors from the first groups formed in 1976, soon after my arrival in Brazil, had also been called for this experiment, but for different reasons were unable to attend. Thursday, November 15th, seemed full of hope for all. After 16 years of work and preparation with extraterrestrials in Brazil, one more group would graduate, qualified to lead and prepare other people in the relationship of learning and cultural exchanges offered by those beings. In fact, Group 4 would be the one to receive the confirmation of having attained a level acceptable to collaborate in the work of forming development and contact centers, and Group 6 was only a guest to the event. We spent the morning and afternoon of the 15th organizing the distribution of space, putting up the rest of the tents, assembling the kitchen, improvising a toilet, looking for wood and rocks for a fire, and using the rest of the time to resolve a few questions about what we should expect during those camping days. In the evening at around 6 p.m., we gathered around the fire, starting the work that had brought us such a long way. Surrounded by the peacefulness of that wild environment, by the sounds of water and animals, we slowly relaxed, feeling the cold mountain breeze caressing our faces, and little by little we focused our minds onto endless space, desirous of another mental contact with the extraterrestrials, asking for their instructions for the ensuing hours. While the darkness of the night descended upon us with its coolness and stars grew brighter, the answers to the questions asked of the extraterrestrials flowed gently to each member of the group. One by one, the group recorded in their notebooks the messages transmitted by the extraterrestrials. When the reception finished, all began to read what they had received. Again, the contents of the messages were the same, and the instructions were clear and objective. In short, the beings informed us that they would manifest their presence and support by the appearance of their spacecrafts and robot probes, which meant that the controlling conditions were put into action and the final tests would follow. They asked us to choose a place for the meditation and self-control exercise that should begin that same evening. The place where we were camping was very familiar to all of us. We frequently used it for this kind of encounter. So, as usual, the place for the experiment would be a woody hill that we had named Self-Control. The sequence in which the members should go to the work area for the self-control had also been received, so we started to organize and begin the activities. While the group got psychologically prepared and the first person waited for his turn, a gently moving light appeared in the sky at low altitude. We immediately looked at our watches and saw it was exactly the time the extraterrestrials had set to indicate that everything was all right. The strange bright object was formed by only a yellow light. No other color could be seen. At first, its course was straight from south to north. Soon after, another object followed close behind the first. The first one accelerated, left the sea, east, and changed its course towards the mountains, west, describing a sharp curve clockwise. The second object kept accelerating towards the north, while the first one also accelerated above us calmly, inverting the curve to anti-clockwise. No engine sounds similar to airplanes or any other spacecraft had accompanied the objects. All was complete silence. By that time, it was almost 8:30 p.m. Among the messages received by the group, the passage of the spacecraft had been recorded, and the time of their appearance was correct. While we discussed the appearance of the object, a swift reddish light was seen moving in the woods, making crazy revolutions, avoiding the trees and going farther into the woods. It was a Canepa, or robot probe, used by the extraterrestrials to assist with the work more closely. An efficient way to show their concrete presence and support to the group and to certify that everything was all right and that the objectives that had led us so far still remained. This kind of phenomenon was now frequent in the field outings and indicated the existence of an organized process of orientation and partnership by the extraterrestrials regarding us. These shows were not prizes offered nor stimulants for our curiosity about the phenomenon, but an objective way to offer concrete proof that we were reaching the minimum level of preparation to be admitted to an exchange of cultures with a society advanced at least 1,000 years beyond ours. As time went by, the group began to get a little nervous and uneasy with the movement of the Canepas. Although the messages pointed to Saturday being the most important day, once in the field, anything was possible. Possible, especially in this camp. The objective was to define and encourage a group to initiate more people into the process of encounters and learning. It was also to complete the preparation of the groups so that they might be able to face a skeptical world as messengers of extraterrestrial beings who generously want to show us simply how intelligent life can develop an orderly, coherent society from which poverty, misery, violence, and hunger would disappear forever. A little tense, but sure of our objectives, one by one we practiced self-control, having previously decided that we would make an evaluation of events only the following day. At 11:30 p.m., another light at high altitude flew over the valley and ended the activities of the group that night. However, I would have to go to the place of self-control to finish the task and receive instructions for the next day, as well as comments about the experiments with the group. While most of the group had dinner and discussed the last sighting for, a few of them silently accompanied me in my slow ascent of the hill. Minutes after disappearing into the darkness, my presence could only be ascertained by the gleam of my flashlight. Just then a small ball of reddish light appeared, flying in the air on the outskirts of the woods at great speed. From a distance, the group could see it swiftly speeding amongst the trees with an erratic movement towards the beam of my flashlight. At that moment, without noticing the presence of the little visitor yet, I sat down on a small collapsible chair in the practice ring. It was the place called Self-Control 1, a secluded spot amongst the trees that formed an almost perfect circle, delineated by strips of white toilet paper to easily distinguish the spot to sit in. In the center was a simple camping chair. While I recovered my breath from the climb, I watched the little red canepa that ran through the woods from right to left, described several circles around me, and stopped just in front of me, floating in the air without a sound. Although I had already seen it in action many times, I was always impressed by it. It had always fascinated me as an object of rare beauty, the product of a distant technology. With the little visitor a few meters away from me, I breathed deeply, relaxed, concentrated, and prepared to get in mental contact with the extraterrestrials with whom I have worked for so many years. Doubtless, at that same moment, I was being observed by them through the canepa, a kind of robotic probe that has an electronic eye and is equipped with a set of sensors that simultaneously transmit signals with the collected information to a central computer inside a spaceship. Besides those images, whether it be day or night, the probe also registers perfectly any organic change or disturbance in the focused creature, be it metabolic, chemical, thermal, related to the circulatory system or the soul, registering effectively and without error the performance of the person being tested. The probes can become literally invisible to human vision if they so wish, by vibrating their mass at a speed superior to the one that the human retina can register. But any camera lens can still capture their activity. The canepa is a polished, metallic, silver sphere that moves erratically and at high speed. It has an eye or camera that emits a light and can be easily seen at night. That light can be white, reddish, orange, blue, or yellow. It sometimes flashes a powerful white light even while totally invisible. It lights up a large area and can be easily mistaken for a flash of lightning. Its size can vary from a soccer ball to 3 times the size of a basketball. The size and color of the light are according to its function. With the object opposite me, I started my concentration, mentally calling the name of the extraterrestrial that has accompanied me in this work since 1974. Soon I felt his voice in my mind while the canepa was silently floating in the air, moving away very slowly. He immediately gave commentaries and an objective evaluation of the present behavior and mental level of the group, as well as of my performance, and after that, new instructions for the following day. Taking advantage of the opportunity, I asked for a personal encounter with him and the training council in order to resolve some serious concerns and to have a complete explanation about some international subjects that worried me. He answered asking for calm and patience. My request would be considered, taking its importance into account. I should expect an answer later on. A little upset at not having a prompt answer for my worries, I breathed deeply and opened my eyes. The little probe was gone, and the shadows of the night were all around. I started the long walk down the hill. Arriving a few minutes later at the camping site, I found only a few people still up. They had seen the canepa when it swiftly entered the woods and asked me what had happened. I simply said that nothing special had happened, and that the most important event was still to come. After 2 bowls of warm soup, I said goodnight to the 3 that were still awake. Tired, I went straight to the tent where my pretty blonde was fast asleep. The weather seemed to cooperate with us. The nights were less cool than usual, and the warm, sunny days made the work more agreeable and kept the group stimulated. I hope it all continues like this, I thought. Friday dawned a splendid day. The hot sun and the spectacular blue sky posed an invitation for a pleasant dip in the clear water of the lake. Flavio was the first one to dive in and complimented the bath with the delicious cold water of the cascade. Newton Caesar and DDG followed suit, and then Marcella, Nilsson, Mario, Sergio, Benicia, and Christine, while Fatima and I watched the party. After the refreshing swim, a hot shower, the latest inspiration of Mario Sergio's known as Gyro Gear Loose, completed the pleasures of that paradise. The day was full of activities and play. Each one described his experiences and reactions during the self-control. Although nothing special had happened, there had been a lot of tension and expectations. During the day, we all tried to relax, because deep inside we knew that at night everything would be quite different. I kept quiet and did not make any comments on my experience to avoid upsetting my companions and feeding their already great anxiety. Time passed swiftly by and the evening soon arrived. At around 6 p.m., the group met again around the fire, and once more mental contact, also called communication, was re-established. A detailed program of what we should do was requested. While the group established their communication, I used my time to review the instructions I had received from my extraterrestrial instructor the previous night and to ask a few questions. After the reception of the messages, we were surprised by a bright object that crossed the space in our view horizontally from end to end at a fantastic speed and at a very low altitude. We quickly made a few calculations to determine the speed of the object. We estimated it at around 5,000 kilometers per hour. It was something beautiful and impressive, a ball of light on an accelerated rectilinear course whose horizontal movement would astonish any skeptic. After calming our emotions, we sat around the fire again in order to analyze the messages received. They requested the practice of self-control again, and the sequence they established indicated that, once again, I would be the last one. The practice began without any interruption or sighting. Christine was the second to go, and while she began the slow ascent of the mountain, Benicia came back. Suddenly we saw the light of another canepa, yellow this time, moving charmingly and swiftly in the woods and lighting up everything around it. Absent-minded, Christine did not notice the probe. This time, the probe entered the woods before the rest of the group had finished the practice, and the fact that everybody saw the little object do that made them a little more nervous than usual. Each of them preferred to wait for their turn, silently and alone. The apprehension and tension were great. Meeting the unexpected was frightening. People went up in an orderly fashion, complying with the sequence indicated by the extraterrestrials. After Christine, it was Flavio's turn and then DDG's. Half an hour later, I approached Newton Caesar and told him to get ready, for DDG was already being sent back by the extraterrestrials. Newton Caesar looked at me a little surprised and replied that DDG had not returned yet. I explained that I was mentally connected with the extraterrestrials, accompanying each member's performance in the self-control as I had done other times. I insisted that he start off in order not to fall behind in the timetable, and said he would meet DDG returning. Remembering the other times he had already seen me do this, Newton Caesar understood and without a word started on his way. Around 10 meters from the woods, Newton Caesar saw the light of DDG's flashlight, who, as I had said, had just finished the practice. He gave him a smile, exchanged a few words with DDG, who was surprised to see him, and silently entered the woods where he could feel the extraterrestrial's presence very strongly. Soon it would be my turn to go up, and while I was contemplating, Christine approached and embraced me tenderly, telling me some of her concerns. Our dialogue was abruptly interrupted by the sighting of 2 more objects moving in the sky, crossing paths. Calmly, we looked at those 2 bright spots that ascended swiftly toward space and out of sight. While I looked at each face present there, I remembered that the extraterrestrials would provide necessary evidence so that the group could be totally sure that, besides being real, The contact depended solely on a level of consciousness coherent with the objectives of life and with the purpose that kept us together. As long as our work of inner development led us to reach that level, the encounters and experiments would improve. Everything that might happen during those days would be the most objective indication of that level. My extraterrestrial instructors would guide my steps and orient the strength of my spirit. What will happen to these people? Soon, others will take their place and the chain would continue. But me, where shall I be? I mused. Approaching Marcella, I told her to start walking because Newton Caesar had just finished his practice. Without comment, she began the ascent. As before, she crossed paths with Newton Caesar, who had just been sent back by the extraterrestrials in charge. At a certain moment, 2 yellow lights were seen moving swiftly in the woods and then in opposite directions, which clearly showed the presence of 2 kinapas this time. Simultaneously, more objects were seen nearby around the valley. When we were all together, right at the end of the self-control practice, a small fleet of 4 objects, 3 in a triangular formation and a 4th one in front, were quietly and calmly flying over the mountains to the right, describing a slow curve. It was an unforgettable show, a well-deserved reward for all of us to end that wonderful night. After that, I went towards the hill. It was my turn for the self-control. A little worried and impatient, I waited for the extraterrestrials' answer. I'd had no sign of their return up to that moment. When I reached the ring, I tried to calm down and relax, this time sitting on the ground facing the tree, watching the strips of white toilet paper, which delineated the ring swinging in the wind. I pondered the events of these 2 fantastic days. A few minutes later, my sidereal instructor entered my thoughts quietly to inform me that the next day I would have the answers to all my questions, the answers I so anxiously awaited. I felt relieved and thanked the being for the support offered to the group. My interplanetary instructor promptly remarked that the phenomena was intended to strengthen the reality of the encounter, and that only with this certainty would the people involved be able to speak to the world. However, even with all the evidence, not everybody would make it. Touched by the extraterrestrials' words, but a little unhappy with the latter information, I stood up and went back to the camping site. On the way, a lot of faces crowded my thoughts. I remembered how many people had been here under similar circumstances, and I wondered where they were today. So much work, so much time spent, and nothing to show for it. As Jesus said, the kingdom of heaven is like that of a king who celebrated his son's wedding, sending his servants to invite the guests to the party, but they did not want to come. Many are called, but very few can hear the call. A worried Christine was waiting for me together with the others. Their remarks indicated how touched everybody was by the ample evidence of extraterrestrial presence. Altogether, 11 objects had been sighted, including the 4 ships in formation, not including the Kenepas. Gradually, the importance of what we were doing impressed everybody deeply, although in my thoughts, I wondered who would really endure what faced us. Tired and more conscious of the task ahead of us, we went to bed, leaving the discussion on our experiences for the next day. Saturday, November 17th, dawned with a delicious sunshine and a wonderful blue sky. In the morning, we analyzed the events of the previous night and agreed that the extraterrestrials' presence and support were total, and so everyone's sense of responsibility and commitment grew proportionately to the events. In the midst of jokes and comments, I tried to see deep inside their souls, trying to unveil their future. Through all these years, I had tried to prepare so many people, guiding them to this point, and so many had not been able to face the compromise and challenge of a deep, radical interchange. So many new beginnings, deceptions, betrayals, and so much incomprehension in so many years. If only one in this group succeeded, my work would be worthwhile, because the world would have one more consolidated, safe path to follow, one more hope to encourage them, one more worker to water and sow the field of a new, better tomorrow. We spent the afternoon discussing several topics and settling some questions that had arisen from the experiments themselves. In the evening, around 6 p.m., we began communication again in order to get more detailed information for the experiments that would take place during the night. In most messages received, I was appointed to coordinate the work that would begin at 8 p.m. sharp at a fixed place right in the middle of the woods. Also, my sidereal instructor informed me in my message that I should be prepared for a physical encounter that would be witnessed by all the group at 9:30 p.m. This message was received only by me, so I kept it to myself. Once we had read and discussed the messages, I took Christine aside and told her about the pending experience. She was worried and frightened that I would be taken away and not return. Caressing her hair and embracing her tenderly, I tried to calm her down, explaining that nothing in this world or any other world would make me leave her, and that this particular encounter was very important, for it would allow me to find out directly from them what could be expected for the future, and thus permit the organizing of our lives accordingly. This encounter, which I thought was the only way to solve our uncertainties, would definitely eliminate my doubts about the situation of our present work here in Brazil and in other countries as well. Also, I would have the opportunity to make a summary of all the work I had already achieved with the extraterrestrials and determine a main direction to be followed in the coming years. We would know which approach to take, what to do, how to do it, with whom, when, and what the final purpose of all that effort was. My destiny would be shaped in the next few hours, and the future of Rama would be reaffirmed or corrected. Around 7:45 p.m., the group consisting of Newton Caesar, Nilsson, Marcella, Mario, Sergio, Fatima, DDG, Flavio, and Gilberto prepared themselves psychologically for what would be their final test. Christine and Benicia embraced them, wishing them good luck and trying to lessen the nervousness in the air. Finally, we silently entered the woods at a previously chosen place, while Benicia and Christine stayed in the camp. Arriving at the site, the group formed a circle, and under my direction began some exercises to relax and ease the tension. Soon afterwards, we all saw a bright mist surrounding us, while a shining object, a canepa, ran around us. A kind of compact, misty energy formed on one side, and other shining canepas sped to the center of the group, sending out a flash of light. Meanwhile, on the outskirts of the woods, and taken by an enormous, unconstrained curiosity, Benicia and Christine watched all the phenomena. The group was commendably calm and succeeded in all the tests they had to undergo. The experience ended, and the group was graduated to spread the message. Happily, they congratulated one another amongst embraces and kisses. Benicia and Christine were in the woods now. Right then, I felt a mental call and immediately gave Christine a kiss and walked to the determined spot. Everybody watched my ascent up the hill, step by step, thinking I was going for another practice of self-control. Only Christine knew where I was going, and worried shed a few tears. At that moment, to everyone's surprise, an intense brightness formed above the site where I was. It was a shining light that filled the whole hill with a strange but wonderful radiance. It disappeared suddenly, taking me with it. Immediately, a shining object stopped right above the group. It was 9:30 when the spaceship stopped, the exact moment I had vanished, and a small red canepa moved quickly out of the woods where I had entered a few moments before. As I had gone up the hill towards the ring, a semi-spherical light formed in front of me. I had seen it at other times. It was a tri-dimensional gate, inviting me to go in. Without a second thought, I stepped forward. Crossing into the light, I was quickly transported to the interior of a circular room with a diameter of approximately 15 meters. The floor was covered with a kind of wall-to-wall carpet. The walls were smooth and metallic. It was well lit with indirect lighting. Before me there was a man, more than 2 meters tall. It was my sidereal instructor Godar, who was standing on the left side of a long, curved table on a kind of stage, from where other similar beings watched me. Once more, I was before the Training Council, a group of beings appointed to coordinate the activities, training, and preparation of human beings in a program called Pilot Project, an experimental variant of the original work applied in Brazil at first. Among the 5 beings who were sitting, I could recognize only Onar, Andar, and Astar. The other 2 were unknown to me. I was in the interior of an extraterrestrial spaceship, exactly the same one that I had visited 2 years earlier during an experiment in the Serra de Tambati in Sao Paulo. The characteristics of the scene were identical. I seemed to be 2 years back in time, for the beings occupied exactly the same places. I think even the clothes were the same. Anyway, I was thrilled by the re-encounter. It took me some time to calm down and be able to think clearly again. Godar approached and summoned me to come nearer the table. Still trembling with emotion, I stepped forward. I breathed deeply, relaxed, and prepared to speak. But at that moment, I heard Godar say, "This is a difficult time for your world, and it tends to get even worse. The solution is likely to come sooner than expected, but at a very high price. Day by day, the human race hinders its possibilities for survival. By your wrong attitude, you are not able to see alternative ways of development, and the chances of a new beginning are reduced. Therefore, we are concerned to help the Earth find a worthy, intelligent condition of life. We want to continue our work with those who are really willing to understand who they are truly, and to improve in the search for a full, harmonious, conscious, and happy life." I was impressed by his words, although it meant no change for the kind of work we had been developing. I listened attentively as he went on. "Actually, nothing will change, for the objectives and aims are exactly the same as at the beginning of this project. The only difference we can point out is that, from now on, we will act more directly. We will not waste time with people who distort the message and the purpose, for time is getting shorter. A great number of groups in other countries are in total anarchy and out of control, subscribing to a complete absurd mystification. They have completely lost their reference parameter. What they were participating in was pure fiction, childishly confusing any manifestation, even a natural one, with one of our signs. Never did they question our rare presence, our delays, or our total absence as a way of indicating their incoherencies. They were simply looking for a unique experience to be enjoyed, without stopping and thinking about its true meaning. Independence and hunger for acceptance were stronger than objectivity and common sense. However, many can still be rescued and many others can be redirected. Does it mean that everything continues normally for us? Nothing has been changed? Can we develop new groups here and in other countries?" I asked, relieved. "Yes, Brazil is a special project that has given good results, as well as the other countries that are part of this exchange. Up to now, we have tried to support all Rama groups in the world with the intention of making it clear and evident that the world has already established contact with more advanced societies with which it can begin an exchange of mutual benefits. Now, we will support the ones that are faithful to their purpose, tuned in with us, and also the groups that have been working united in the commitment of transformation, not in bureaucracy or the search for power and prestige. Project Rama has been transformed into a messianic, pseudo-Christian religious movement, totally divorced from what it should be. It is hard to believe that even after more than 2,000 years, the mystification and the distortion continue. With the implantation and development of Project Emmanuel, we already observed the same behavior. It was no use giving examples, making analogies, or using simple words in the attempt to speak clearly. The teachings and orientation were transformed in various religions due to ignorant manipulation. We think that nowadays this phenomenon is less likely to be repeated, but we have noticed that human beings have changed very little. The lack of deep reflection, detailed analysis, and constructive query are the worst faults in the human being. They usually try to apply themselves to destructive purposes, to try their strength or to compete. If the elect came back now, I would not be surprised if instead of being crucified, he was assassinated for fear of being a political agitator, a subversive, or a terrorist. The churches created by him would probably be the first ones to try to destroy him, fearing he would contest the way they conduct the doctrine. Similar to what happened in the past, people looked to Rama as a refuge for their loneliness, anxiety, and hopelessness, rather than to truly understand what we had to offer. All they could see was a mere chance of better days, of promises of hope. They did not realize it had to be built by themselves. Godar, I wonder if human beings have yet to free themselves from the deficiencies caused by experimental processes and mutations that occurred in the past, including the genetic interference by you. Now would be the right time for the human race to overcome the imperfections that interfered in your evolution. Perhaps not everybody, but at least a few would already be awakening from the dream. The experiments that occurred in the past and the chemical and environmental influence of the planet upon your genetic development should already have been minimized. For the ancestral origin of humans and ours have something in common. Unfortunately, probably only a few human beings will succeed in freeing themselves from the chains of the past and the obstacles of the present. Anyway, these are the ones you should look for. Godar, nowadays, there have been an increasing number of extraterrestrial encounters where almost everybody has undergone experiments which they cannot consciously remember. Why do you persist? Haven't you had enough experiments with human beings yet? Remember that the human being is a subproduct of mutations that occurred through millions of years of evolution from our ancient colonies. The environment, together with a nourishment consisting of a biochemical structure alien to their origin, changed their genetic characteristics, affecting their psyche and the development of their brain. It transformed their behavior, their perceptions, their coordination, and restricted fantastic potentialities. When humanity began their cultural development, that unnatural insanity or psychotic configuration derived from the mutations should have been overcome through natural selection by eliminating the problematic individuals and allowing the capable ones to genetically transmit their qualities to their descendants. However, it did not occur because their wars demanded a human contingent considered to be the most able. Consequently, historically, human culture has always gradually eliminated the best individuals and also the paranormal ones. I mean, when the human race began to improve and what you call paranormal manifestations began to occur, religion destroyed them, saying they had a pact with the devil. So the best human beings are always destroyed while the technically worst are preserved. The physically less capable, the mentally deficient, the genetically fragile are the ones that continue to procreate under the protection of what you call civilization. Criminality and violence grow in proportion to the protection given to the criminals, genetically transmitting their qualities to their descendants. This is why we are regularly following your genetic development in order to estimate the correct moment when your mental potential can be triggered and to measure your potential danger. Because if you do not correct your behavior before that, you will be a menace to all kinds of life, intelligent or otherwise. This is one of the reasons why we are watching you so closely. Well, I understand we must seem a bad batch to all of you. Our general instability can really destroy us. But by what I understand, the only thing that will change is that the experiments and encounters will be specifically limited to those who have unveiled the mystery of time, those who are emerging from the cocoon. After the metamorphosis, those who, awakening to a new consciousness, will try to build a better world in a practical, honest way. Those who, without any falsehood, hypocritical spiritualism, or cheap altruism that hides an egotistical self-esteem, will unremittingly continue the task of self-transformation for the benefit of humanity in the search for their true identity. Yes. Do you mean then that neither the cynicism of false modesty, retrograde dogmatism, nor mystification that changes our work into a kind of religion or into a kind of extraterrestrial Christianity will count? Is that so? Yes. Do you mean that we must concentrate our efforts in a more selective process and identify the ones who are ready waiting? Yes. From now on, we will support only those who have broken the barriers of limitations, and honestly, will look for real inner growth, those who will not be detained in time, and those who will permanently bear in mind that in order to evolve or progress, it is necessary to develop dynamic, deep levels of consciousness. They must have a clear understanding of themselves and of their relationship with others, without the bewilderment or interference caused by impulsive attitudes, false morality, struggle for power, and selfishness. We will go on looking for human beings who have opened their mind's eye, who have broken the chain of spiritual ignorance and obscurity, and who are now able to realize the value of life. Tired of getting lost in mawkish reverie, they will be ready to understand a wider reality of life. What can we expect from you from now on? What do you expect from us? I asked, less worried. What has been the main reason for our coming here since the beginning? The redemption of a humanity built out of the ashes of civilizations come from other worlds. The identification of a reason to grow, the search for beings that deserve a future, the continuous offer to guide your understanding so that you can realize that the human being is not a creature confined to a rigid or stagnant reality, be be it social, spiritual, political, ideological, or economic, to show you that there is a lot to be discovered and understood in order to reach levels of valuable existence, and that we are here now by our own free will to help you walk through the universe. We are here to give you conditions to justify your existence and continuity to the universal order, in order to warn you that if you do not change your course, you may lose everything. We are humble regarding apprenticeship, but we look for those who want to evolve with love and respect, and we recognize that some of you are waking up from an ancestral dream and are crying out for a new chance to live in plenitude. This is why we continue by your side. As long as your relationship with us is honest and unselfish in its objectives, we will go on working together. All life in this immense universe was created for only one reason. What happens to one person affects the ones around him. The intelligent creature is no doubt responsible for most positive or negative transformations in this interplanetary scene. Only by performing your role correctly will you achieve the wonderful work of contributing to the perpetuation and continuity of the natural process of selection. Otherwise, you will allow the possibility of endangering life already existent and condemn it to either a process of extinction or some kind of universal destruction. For the time being, we will be with you in the search for people who are open-minded, humble, and receptive to new knowledge. People who have a deep love for a full, healthy, joyful, free, productive life, who live in hope of building a better, more humane future. People to whom all these things are more important than their self-sacrifice, than the difficulties they have to face because of people's incomprehension, than the leisure time spent in the accomplishment of that task, than the loneliness and disrespect they have to undergo in order to start on their way towards the building of a better world to live in, a new world with room for human and interplanetary societies, a really evolved spiritual world. Godar's words touched my soul deeply, shook my feelings, and made me shed a furtive tear. Nothing else needed to be said. Responsibility grew, and the task was confirmed. The extraterrestrial Onar stood up, looked at me, and said, "Go in peace. We will continue helping those who value life, those to whom offering the opportunity to understand the act of life with love is more important than ideas, ideals, dreams, or errors." However, love means to respect each person's moment in his eternal journey along the path of development. Nothing justifies criticism, judgment, or labeling. Basically, nobody is anybody's judge. From the humblest to the most arrogant, each person lives his own moment, so he must be respected. Only those who love and respect life more than themselves will find a place beside us. We love life so much that we are and will always be beside those who want to share the opportunity to transform that universal love into a reality that can be reached by all those who wish to build it from the bottom of their hearts. Those who place their interests ahead of love are doomed to loneliness. The secret of harmony, coherence, development of life, freedom, and realization is to love with consciousness. However, love is also not to be an accomplice or conniving at other people's expense. From the moment somebody's freedom is invaded or threatened, he will have the right of response. Love is to know when, how, where, and what must be given, and not to give what is left. Many interplanetary entities resent your behavior and the fact that you exist to use them as parts of an experiment and their world as a laboratory. The universal ethic favors the majority when a minority offers obstacles or threatens the natural course of things. You must reverse this situation quickly, for you are gradually getting farther from meriting the continuance of your freedom. Do your task and preserve your commitment with life. Deeply touched by those words, I looked at Godar, who slowly walked towards me and with his huge hand indicated a new interdimensional door that had been opened. While I turned and began walking, Godar said softly, "Next time you come to this place of practice, we will meet once again. Now go in peace. You need not worry. Nobody but yourselves can ever take away from you what you have already conquered. Keep your purpose in mind and we will be with you." Still a little dizzy, I walked towards the light and crossed the new energy gate that had opened behind me. Suddenly, I found myself in the dark of night. I could not see anything at all, and I was totally disoriented. I could not identify where I was. Somewhat frightened, I instinctively looked for my flashlight. I could hear the voices of the people in the group. Little by little, I noticed I was not on the hill, but less than 7 meters from the camp and on the other side of the brook. I had been transported to the other extreme of the lake, more than 100 meters from the place where I had crossed the interdimensional gate. That was totally unusual. We were usually returned to the same place of departure. I was rather dizzy and could hardly understand what was going on. Suddenly, I felt a powerful hug and a kiss. It was Christine, who could not control her emotions while she embraced me. She felt relieved by my return. Like an avalanche, everybody ran towards me, asking questions all at the same time. Newton Caesar held my arm and looked at my watch. He noticed a considerable difference in the hour registered. They had seen me appear from nowhere, suddenly materializing exactly when all the members of the group were looking in the same direction. Mario Sergio had teased Christine, saying that it was taking me a long time to come back because I had been taken to another planet. He had the strong, strange intuition to ask the group to move to another place. Trusting him, the group moved to the other side of the camp, facing the place where I would materialize just moments later. When all of them ran towards me, I did not know what was happening. Everything had been too fast for me to comprehend. According to the group, I had been absent for a little more than 35 minutes, too long compared to my usual practices of self-control, but my watch indicated 1 hour and a half longer. They were astonished, could not believe what they had seen. Someone had suddenly materialized out of nowhere, right in front of them. It was particularly curious, as if it had been previously arranged, that Mario Sergio had felt the urge to take the group to the exact place where I would appear in just a few seconds, giving everyone the opportunity to see the materialization. Otherwise, the group would have been on the other side of the camp and would not have seen anything. And to make things still crazier, my watch indicated 1 hour and a half longer elapsed time. I had probably spent that missing time in another reality of space-time. It had been an incredible night. Once again, the extraterrestrials had offered us a great experience. The certainty that the contact is real is there to guarantee our development and to show us that if other humanities succeeded in overcoming their difficulties, we can as well, if not everybody, at least those who wish to achieve it. That night, we could hardly sleep. We were excited and happy. Rama is really something very special for all of us, for it is in the heart of those who dream and work to build the day when this planet will be the home of honorable beings, where violence will be just a sad legend of a distant past, where hunger and misery will be a ghost exorcised, where the light from pure, spiritualized hearts will guide the steps of future generations. A long road lay ahead of us to the accomplishment of our goals in the world. With jokes and joyous laughter, one by one, everybody went to their tents to sleep. Outside our tent, I looked at the empty, dark camp. The starry night and the silence around me invited meditation. Approaching the almost extinguished fire, thousands of thoughts ran through my mind while my eyes watched the stars and my hands caressed Christine's face, almost asleep. During my meditation, my thoughts flew swiftly and far from the camp. I wonder what these people's destiny will be, I asked. Where will they be, and what will they be doing in a year from now? Some falling stars broke my concentration, and while I tenderly covered my sweet, sleeping Christine, my mind dove through the veil of time. I remembered so many moments and people, experiences and words spoken, and now a whole future ahead of me. New directions, new horizons, a story to be told, a unique adventure, an experience that looks like the stuff of legends, that lasts like the epic stories of a race, tales that represent one more step in the course of evolution. I am not more than others, only someone who came to this life trying to find the answers that time and man forgot. I am you who will read these lines in time, in the future, in your future.